There's a new study, Doctor, that comes out. Researchers found that pharmaceutical companies and cancer drugs don't spend nearly enough on research and development as they say they do. And so the bigger question is they're trying to figure out is, why do drugs cost so much? Dr. Michael Lim, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Why do drugs cost so much?
Yeah.
Heck of a question.
Yes.
Please
explain in 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. And what they really cost and how much they really spend.
Right.
And it's a complex world. The drugs that they're talking about here are cancer drugs, which are a lot of times really, really high dollar, high ticket type items.
Right.
The concept of cancer is that, you see one patient with cancer, you have one patient with cancer. All cancers are quite different. Their aggressiveness, their cell types, what they affect, and potentially how to target them. And so, when the big talk is, well, we want to individualize treatment and we want to actually just kill cancer cells. Because basically the old kind of school of chemotherapy is, well, aimed at killing the fastest dividing cells possible. And that means all cells within your body. And that's why you lose hair, and that's why you throw up a lot and you lose a lot of stuff. So
they were killing the good cells as well as the bad cells.
Killing good cells and bad cells, but that's the best we had. And so the newer, more refined therapies for cancer are trying to target specific markers that cells have on them, little signs saying, hey, I'm McGraw, and come after me. And that costs money. The question is, or the masquerade based on this article basically kind of says, well, look, the company's saying it costs a lot of money because that's hard. And you have to put a lot of money into research and development to try to create a drug that would do this.
Right. And
then it costs a lot of money to run it through the series of clinical trials to prove that it not only works for patients, but it's also safe and doesn't have other bad things going on with it. And so by the end of all of that, then we finally get it approved. Well, we spent a lot of money. And so it's going to cost a lot of money because we have to recoup our costs. And this article maybe says, well, those costs are about half of what you said they were. And so you're, quote unquote, gouging the consumers. And that would make anybody mad, is you're paying maybe twice as much as you should be for a medication. And I think that's the point here. How much are we really paying? And what is the pharmaceutical industry? And it's an industry.
Right.
They're in business. It's the same as a car industry, the same as anything else. They make a product, they sell a product, they're trying to make a profit. If they're not doing it for the benevolence of the world. Right. If they can't make a profit, they can't stay in business.
They have shareholders and
they do
stocks and bonds and everything else. The point, though, is, and this is often said, the first pill costs $300 million. The second pill costs 1/10 of a cent.
Wow, that's a big difference. But
once it's approved, the next one is nothing. But the first one costs all the money.
So two different points to that, and I understand where that's coming from, and that has been said. A lot of these drugs, from a cancer standpoint, there's not necessarily a me too, because there's so many different targets that are out there. And many of these drugs are being developed by startup companies, small. So the big pharmaceutical companies, they don't develop a lot of drugs anymore. I remember the days where Pfizer used to have a huge presence in St. Louis, where they were really developing a lot of different products. Right. They've kind of divested themselves of a lot of those types of avenues, and small startup companies start these developments, and then what happens is the startup companies get bought by a company like Pfizer. And now Pfizer's not just buying the product and how much it costs for the product, but they're buying the company. The startup company and the dollars that went into that, and the investors that got that, they want their money.
The argument and what drives people crazy is the same drug is cheaper in Canada than it is here in America.
Yeah.
And so it costs all the same. The drug company has all the patents, but why is it cheaper in other places and more expensive here?
Yeah. So I think that's the one thing that does drive most people nuts, is it's this exact same thing in a different country costs totally different amount.
Right.
And that's because the concept with respect to, if you look at the chart, and I actually haven't seen one, but I can imagine this exists in a pharmaceutical company's boardroom, that they figure out where they can get their profits from. And that's been on the backs of the United States for forever. And so there have been higher prices in this country for pretty much everything than there are for the rest of the world.
Right.
And I think it has a lot to do with basically, you can argue with it, but our country's a capitalistic country, right?
Right.
And so it's about supply and demand. And if you price something at a point, you can charge $400,000 for a Tesla. Is anybody going to buy it?
Right.
You charge $40,000 for a Tesla. Way more people are going to buy it. What's that right sweet spot where people will still buy it, but you can make money? And that's a business decision.
Well, and that's where Canada can negotiate, since it's quote unquote government run, right? They can negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies, but it's kind of hard to do that here when you have not as much buying power with these individual insurance companies and hospitals and doctors and everything else.
Well, true. And these ideas with respect to, well, we should get that kind of buying power, have been put forward, allowing Medicare as one of the biggest payers to negotiate these large-term things and try to get these. Somebody always wants to throw a monkey wrench in those great ideas, and so they never actually start getting moving forward.
Right.
It's kind of like that thing we keep talking about in this world of politics and the cost of medicine. It's always good guy, bad guy.
Right.
And there's always a bad guy that they point to, but that bad guy keeps changing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is, and then remember a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, remember was the EpiPen price went through the roof?
Yeah.
And people were upset, but the same people who were upset that they have to pay $600 for the EpiPen want, capitalistic ideas in their healthcare. Well, you can't have it both ways.
You really can't. And I think that the more and more we talk about these kind of things, my hope would be that we start actually getting a better grasp of the fact that this is complex, but we got to start moving it forward step by step. Can't just sort of take clean slate and say, it's Wednesday, it's almost the end of September, we're going to do this week and move forward.
You're bad, I'm perfect. Right. No, that's a good point.
You might be. But
Dr. Michael Lim, ladies and gentlemen, he does not duck the tough questions or the tough topics. Dr. Michael Lim, cardiologist with Slew Care and SSM Health, St. Louis Hospital. Thanks for checking in.
Thanks. Have a good one.
8:20.